And on today's show, how understanding your own capacity can impact your business. Part 4 of this week's series on industry trends that will change the financial industry with nationally recognized top industry consultant, Chuck Hollander. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Backroom Technician. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome to day 4, Chuck.
Yeah, good to see you.
Man, this has been an intense time, I have to say. You're taking the savant is having a problem keeping up here.
Someone once told me recently. Matter of fact, you were in the workshop.
Yeah.
Chuck, you got to tone it down a little.
Well, I think our guys want to be. You have huge production. You sat under the mentorship of one of the top producers of all time, Sidney Freeman.
Yeah.
You hang with some of the biggest producers, people that have to produce somewhere in the $500,000 or above just to play in some of these organizations that you belong to.
Yeah.
When I look at that, I'm thinking my producers, my audience want to hear from the best. And if you found out a way to crack the code, and we're introducing, by the way, this is a huge workshop. We're just trying to reduce this down into a couple shows.
Yeah.
And you want to do this. If you ever get to see this, Chuck's got some of this, and some of this is coming up online pretty soon.
Yep.
You'll want to do this because this is where you want to go. You want to learn from people who are actually out in the field and actually have done this and put serious numbers up like Chuck has done. Well, Chuck, we're talking about capacity. And when I think about capacity, I'm just one guy.
Yeah.
I don't, everybody says, well, it's not time management. We learned that Tuesday.
That's right.
It's not about time management.
Yep.
It's not about trying to work harder.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about your capacity issues, because to me, this is a place where we make a major mistake and it's a flaw in our thinking. I think there's a work ethic here that's good, but I think it got in the way.
Yep. So this trend here, building a financial services practice, is it getting more simple or more complex? Most advisors will tell us, they'll respond by saying it's getting more complex.
It is.
I mean, you think about the industry, 10, 20 years ago. It was completely different than the way it is today. So complexity and building a business, a practice, is completely different than it is today. Has your leisure time, has it increased or decreased over the years? What would you guess?
I would guess it has decreased.
Tremendously.
Tremendously, right.
So what's really interesting is when you ask advisors why they got into this field, 2 top reasons: income and freedom. So it's this paradox. You know how they increase their income? Conventional thinking. Now it's delivered as advice. You go out and sell more. And if you want to grow, you go out and sell more. So when you keep repeating that formula, eventually you have no more leisure time. And you become overworked and overwhelmed. And as we talked about in one of the previous shows, that's nothing more than a recipe to career burnout and productivity. And as it relates to our next show, there's no commercial value. So capacity is a real issue. Another challenge: have your work hours increased or decreased? So what would you guess here?
I would say increased tremendously.
Tremendously. And why is that? Because we forget the law of capacity. Everybody has a certain amount of capacity. The capacity says we have 10 things to do and we have time to do 8 of them. The question is, which 8 will you do? So when you don't have a strategic plan, you can't do what we talked about in one of the earlier shows, as Steve Jobs said. Remember what he said? Focus is saying no. Well, in order to say no, you need to know what to say yes to. So capacity is about how can we increase our capacity so we can restore our income potential, not just make more money, income potential, and restore our leisure time and our freedom.
I want to ask you something, because there's a definition floating around on the web about capacity issues, and it kind of goes back to that old Clint Eastwood movie, a man's got to learn his own limitations. He's got to know his own. Is it really about knowing my limitations, or is it just saying no to the wrong thing? To make sure I'm saying no to the right things?
If you say no to certain things, that becomes just a cliche. You really do need to know what your limits are, because if you don't understand that, you don't understand the cost and the consequences of not addressing it. And otherwise, we get advisors just looking for time management techniques or better ways to do things. It's not it. So you need to build a healthier business. That's the theme in all these segments, to build a healthier business. So take the metaphor that I use is you've become the lone wolf. You're an expert hunter. You can capture and make plenty of kills. But when you're the only one that does that, you become this lone and exhausted wolf, overworked and overwhelmed. What you need to do is learn how to create that skill set that you have and share it amongst others. So now it's a pack capacity. Think of a wolf pack. I could take the alpha wolf out and the pack will survive. If we take an advisor out of his team, most likely that team will not survive. So to increase capacity is about creating repeatability, creating systems and processes. That's what the business is about. And systems and processes are the anti-venom. Repeatability is the anti-venom to complexity. So that's how we address this capacity issue.
When we come back from the break, I'm going to ask him to talk a lot more about this capacity issue, because I think we're in a trap and I think we need to get out of the snare. And I don't know, when I think about lone wolf, I think about the issue of, well, I thought being the franchise was the whole end game. Sounds like it's not. We'll be right back in about 30 seconds. Back in the day, life insurance professionals were called field underwriters. Then, carriers trained their field force in the basics of life insurance underwriting. Today, the insurance industry doesn't educate the agent population as they once did. But now you can have the Informed Risk Guide at your fingertips so you can illustrate a reasonable rate class for your life insurance prospects. Just request your copy of the Informed Risk Guide at downtobusiness.ashbrokerage.com. It's free from Ash Brokerage, the practice enhancement company. Well, Chuck, I want to talk about that issue of the lone wolf because, I think a lot of people are under the illusion, hey, I'm supposed to be a franchise player. I'm supposed to be the main guy. I like being alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can be alpha. You can be alpha. But you can't be the only one that knows how to go take down a deer or an elk. Because if you're the only one that can do that, then stop complaining about the fact that you're overworked and overwhelmed, or get accustomed to it. Stop worrying about whether you can make more money, because everyone has a certain capacity. And you'll never build a healthy organization if you're the only one that can do the most vital skill set.
I think producers connect that idea with, if I have to kind of decentralize myself through other people, then I'm going to have to share commissions. I'm not going to make as much money. Yeah, and that's really the reverse.
No, it's
counterintuitive.
It is counterintuitive, and it's narrow-minded. It's a symptom of the way the industry's brought us up. That if that was the case, we'd never know Disney, right? We wouldn't David Packard and Bill Hewlett, right? And the list goes on. So the fact is, a true team with a shared vision and a shared purpose of why we exist will always accomplish more than one individual. I just did a workshop in Austin. I had a friend of mine, Cade Courtley, come on. And Cade is retired 8-year SEAL, instructor in BUDS, sniper. And, we use the sniper as a metaphor. When you go out as a sniper, it's a 2-person team. One is spotting, looking at wind, looking at temperature, everything that's going to have an impact of that bullet hitting the target that they want. And the other's the trigger. So they can always accomplish more by together. You're a 5, I'm a 5, together we're a 25. Go back to the wolf pack. The wolf pack can accomplish so much more than any group of individuals. They can take down a bear, they can take down an elk, an animal that they never would have been able to do as an individual. So this mindset that I'm going to share and give up is nonsense. The fact is, if you address this capacity problem, you open the world up to huge opportunities.
So I hear from this first slide, my business and myself, we're synonymous. There's no separation or departmentalization.
That's the industry, right?
Tell me why people are going to say, I am limited. I think they're going to hear after this, they're going to say, if true confession came up here, I have limited capacity. What do I do about it?
Yeah. So, the first thing you need to do is start treating yourself like a business. You start to recognize some of the things we've been talking about in all these episodes. We talk about them not as individual things to address, but as a methodology to address the bigger problem. And we're going to talk about transferable, right?
Right.
So you don't end up 20, 30 years in this business looking back that I was underpaid, overworked, and really all I had was a job. I have no commercial value in my practice. So we'll address that. But here in the law of capacity, it's looking at your business completely different. What are some of the things that we can create scale and repeatability around? And the first one, obviously, is sales. When you're the only one that can do that, if you want to build a true organization, it doesn't have to be a 50-man organization. But if you want to build and tap into your full capacity, then you need to look to building a healthy team.
Now, when you were under the tutelage of Sid Freeman, who's probably the creme de la creme guy that understands all this, he did this. He started replicating his DNA in guys like you.
Well, he could have done this a little better. Yeah, there was a handful of guys. So when Sidney passed on, Sidney's legacy amongst a lot of people who knew him will live on as a leader, as a motivator, a top producer. But as his legacy as a business, it was diminished significantly. You know, it was boiled down to the value of the recurring revenue. So what you want to do is duplicate. Even a guy like Sidney, you can duplicate. You can't create another Sidney, but you can create the things that he did in a meeting that made him so successful. And I'm an example of it. So you can transfer even one of the most unique individuals the planet's probably ever met, right? Sid Freeman.
Right.
And you can identify transferable habits that create consistent results.
Now, as a top producer yourself, and you started adopting a lot of these, you saw value in his way of doing things. There's an approach here.
Yeah.
And once you say it, I say to many people, don't break formula. You have people that are successful on this. I'm not going to customize my own. I'm not going to tailor it for my own self, my own business. I'm going to go after guys who have already proven this and have transferable value that I can take on.
Well, you go back to our previous segment about the client engagement, right? So you had the client compass that I created where you identify whether they're satisfied, aware of the problem, whether they want to fix it or not, by recognizing that is a transferable system, so it's repeatable. I could teach you that in 5 minutes, and I will make sure that you always avoid one habit I want to eliminate. You know, rushing to presentation, doing a proposal safari, an underwriting safari. That one system I can transfer and avoid and create predictable behavior.
When we come back tomorrow, we're going to talk about why did we talk all these days on these subjects, because at the end game is going to be commercial value.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to be looking at that tomorrow, and I think you're going to find that seriously interesting for your practice. Well, that's our show for today. Remember, before moving forward with any of the ideas you hear on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or your broker-dealer compliance department. And don't forget, you can view all our past episodes at downtobusiness.ashbrokerage.com. And remember, you could be wiser as an Ash Brokerage advisor. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you tomorrow.